Saskatchewan's highest court has ruled in favor of the federal government's carbon tax. Alberta Premier Jason Kenney joins us now for reaction to this and some other energy issues that he's facing. Good to see you, Premier. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So let's start right there. We are waiting for this decision. The Saskatchewan Court of Appeal siding with Justin Trudeau and his carbon tax. What's your initial reaction?
I haven't had a chance to review it. I understand it was a close judgment, 3-2, and it was on fairly narrow technical grounds. So we will review it. We'll be speaking to our provincial allies, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, and New Brunswick, all of whom are opposed to the carbon tax cash grab. We think it's all economic pain and no environmental gain. In Alberta, we have a different situation than Saskatchewan because we have and will retain a levy on major industrial emitters. So we'll be occupying that space in a way that Saskatchewan's not. So I think the legal situation may be a little different, but we'll take a chance to read the decision and study it first.
The crux of course, is whether they constitutionally can do this. And it seems to be right now, as I read through it, they said, well, you know, it is within their rights. So some of the other issues aside, this is a bit of a blow out of the gate. This would have been a nice win for your side in terms of precedent for the other courts to look at.
I suppose so. But again, it's a 3-2 decision. I'm told by our lawyers initially that it's a very narrow decision. And I've always known that this is going to go to the Supreme Court of Canada, win, lose, or draw at the provincial courts. We're still waiting for an Ontario Appeal Court reference. We may or may not launch our own separate reference in Alberta, so that we have not yet seen the end of this story. We will continue, though, with Bill number 1 of our new legislature, the Carbon Tax Repeal Act. There will be no provincial carbon tax by the end of May in Alberta. By the end of June, excuse me.
You've only been in the job a couple days now, having been sworn in earlier this week. You've come to Ontario. You were in Ottawa. You met with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Coming out of that meeting, do you get the sense that he wants the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion to be built?
I think so, and after all, the federal government owns it now, so they better. Having said that, we don't just need one coastal pipeline, we need multiple pipelines. And Mr. Trudeau killed the Northern Gateway pipeline, effectively killed Energy East, surrendered to President Obama's veto of Keystone XL, and has really done nothing to overcome the campaign of obstruction from the BC New Democrats on the Trans Mountain expansion. So that's why, and we're very concerned that with Bill C-48, the tanker ban, which basically writes into law his veto of Northern Gateway, and Bill C-69, what we call the No More Pipeline Act, writing into law the policies that killed Energy East. So I was very clear with the Prime Minister. If we want to bring investment back to Canada, get a fair price for our energy, he cannot proceed with those bills.
Now, I caught a bit of your speech on Bay Street this afternoon, and you were talking about the feelings in Alberta right now, the feelings of alienation, and some of the polling that you saw where half of the population is talking about separation. If the Trudeau Liberals win the election this fall, I can't imagine it's going to be on the support of the people of Alberta. How could that ratchet up the tensions and the feelings of isolation?
It probably will do that, and that's why I was clear in our recent provincial campaign that I intend to work for a new federal government. The policies of Mr. Trudeau's government have been massively damaging to Alberta and his re-election. If he intends to continue with policies like C-69, C-48, et cetera, will be massively damaging to our future prosperity. So on this Saskatchewan Appeal Court decision, I've always said on the carbon tax, our plan A is to go to the courts, and our plan B is to go to the people at the ballot box this October.
It's such an interesting time for carbon tax discussions and policies. It struck me as very interesting. Just a couple weeks ago, Royal Dutch Shell. If you're talking big oil, this is big oil. They had some reservations about the Association of Petroleum Producers in this country not getting on board with carbon tax. You're going to repeal it for Alberta, but you have these energy giants saying they're on board. Do you feel a disconnect with the industry?
No, I don't. First of all, Royal Dutch Shell endorsed the NDP's Alberta carbon tax in 2015, and then they subsequently they removed all their investments from the oil sands. So, you know, I'm not going to be lectured to by multinational, multi-trillion-dollar corporations who want to make life more expensive for widows trying to heat their homes or single moms trying to take their kids to school. I think it's incredibly cynical to see multinational oil companies trying to make life more expensive for ordinary people. If Shell and major oil companies want to pay a carbon tax, well, under our policy, they'll be able to with the levy on major industrial emitters. But let's not punish ordinary people for living normal lives in a cold northern climate like Canada's.
Now, the parliamentary budget officer came out with a report, and they crunched the numbers, taking the Trudeau Liberals by their word, they told me when I interviewed them, and that the average Canadian would see more money back than they pay out.
So I think most people would say, then, so what's the point? Why take money out of one pocket, put it back in the other? All it does is create a big government bureaucracy. It's the only people who could come up with such an idea are politicians who want to have more control over ordinary people's lives. Look, every time the carbon tax has actually been on the ballot in this country, it's been defeated. That's what happened in Alberta recently. It's what happened in Ontario, in Manitoba, in New Brunswick. So I'm going to listen to ordinary Canadians who say, you know, don't punish us for heating our homes or buying groceries or driving to work.
All right, Premier, thank you for joining us. I know you've had a busy tour and you're headed back to Alberta, I anticipate very soon.
But I'm here on Bay Street today to say Alberta's open for business. We're going to have the lowest business tax rates in Canada. We're cutting red tape by a third. And so investors are going to have the best place in Canada to do business in will once again be Alberta in the very near future.
Thank you again for joining us, Premier.
Thank you.
That was Alberta Premier Jason Kenney.